Well, our thanks as always to Home Street Bank for their support of this podcast. If you're looking for a bank that has it all, great people, great service, great rates, this is the place for you. This is my lender of choice. It should be yours as well. Go to homestreetbank.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your banking needs, both business and personal. That's homestreetbank.com. Today on The Buyer's Mind, a special show just for sales managers. Stick around, you're going to love it.
Welcome to The Buyer's Mind, where we take a closer look deep inside your customer's decision-making mechanism to reverse engineer the perfect sales presentation. Now, please welcome your host, Jeff Shore.
Well, welcome everyone to The Buyer's Mind, where we take that tour through the buying brain to figure out the way that a customer makes a purchase decision. That is what we are all about. When we understand the way that our buyer buys, we can reverse engineer our sales presentation to make it easy to do just that. But today we're going to focus on all of you sales executives out there, the unsung heroes with supposedly just one job, but with 1,000 various and seemingly unrelated tasks to perform each day. This is for you. You know, I so appreciate sales leaders and what they do. And one of the reasons that makes this job so difficult and so unique is that the sales leader, more than anybody else in the organization, has to operate out of both sides of their brain. Okay, so you've got the right brain, that creative, emotional side of the brain. It's where we're going to do all of our people work. But then you've got the left brain, that logical, evaluative, and analytical part of the brain, where we're going to crunch numbers and do pricing analysis and everything else. And as a sales leader, we are called to exercise both sides of the brain so much through the course of the day. Our brains get a tremendous workout. You could imagine then why most sales leaders have a migraine by the end of the day. Murph, you've been around the company long enough now to see just what sales leaders go through. Do you sometimes look at this odd kind of person and scratch your head a little bit?
I don't think I scratch my head a little bit. I certainly have sympathy for how they have to struggle on, like you said, both sides of their brain to try and reconcile those pieces. It's got to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no question about it, and it really, really is. If you lose your focus, you can get so stuck in the things part of the job that you kind of forget the people part of the job. But when we're doing this right, we stay focused on what really, really matters. So that'll lead us to our quote of the day, and I love this. This is from the movie A Bug's Life. First rule of leadership: everything is your fault. I just love that quote. First rule of leadership: everything is your fault. Listen, sales leaders, I want to encourage you that if things are going really well, take all of the credit. Feel free to take all of the credit, because you're going to get all the blame when things aren't going so well. You probably already know that. But maybe a better quote is this, and I've seen this ascribed to a number of people, but I'm going to give it to Howard Hendricks. This is where I first heard it. A leader without a follower is just a guy out on a walk. A leader without a follower is just a guy out on a walk. It's not about management. It's about leadership. You manage things. You lead people. And I just want to challenge you before we get into our conversation with Mike Weinberg on this. How do you know if you're doing it right? And my suggestion, look at your calendar. You vote with your time. How much of your time is dedicated to things, and how much of your time is dedicated to people? Because when we're thinking about sales leadership and what that looks like, it is critical that we've got our balance correct on this, that we're spending the right time with people. Well, let me give you our tip of the day, and it is for sales leaders to do this. Stop studying your own industry. Now, I know that sounds contrary to what you've ever heard. I don't think you're ever actually going to stop studying your industry. What I'm going to suggest, however, is that there is so much to learn by stepping outside of your industry. There's so much to learn by studying what other people do, people who have jobs similar to yours, but in some completely different place. If I were in your shoes, I would be starting a mastermind group where you are meeting with sales executives from all different industries. Try and find those commonalities. Try and find those things that are similar that will be helpful to be able to bring in from one company into another company, from one industry into another industry. Now, look, that may not sound easy. It might actually sound uncomfortable, but listen, you got to think about it from this perspective. We're constantly asking our salespeople to handle the uncomfortable, right? That's what salespeople do. They do uncomfortable things. But here's my question to you, sales leaders. Is your own comfort addiction stifling your growth? Or worse, the growth of your team? The fact is that confrontation is uncomfortable. Coaching is uncomfortable. Role-playing is uncomfortable. Correction is uncomfortable. Reaching outside your industry to go find somebody who has nothing to do with what you do, that's uncomfortable. All these things are uncomfortable, but they are all vital to our success. Are you willing? Are you willing to do the uncomfortable thing? Are you willing to stretch? Are you willing to model for your own salespeople what stepping into your discomfort zone is going to look like? Because I want to tell you right now, the great victories are on the other side of your discomfort. Do not let your discomfort be a barrier. Let your discomfort be an indicator of the success that is to come. Well, let me tell you, I'm a proud member of a tribe of sales experts from around the world. We get together to share content, to learn from one another, basically to elevate the world of sales. But when these sales thinkers have a question, they generally turn to Mike Weinberg, speaker, author, consultant, and moreover, just a really, really good guy. Joining us from St. Louis, Missouri, Mike Weinberg. Mike, how you doing, sir?
Jeff, I am great, and I appreciate your inflated view of me, so thanks for having me.
Let's talk about sales leadership. You wrote Sales Management Simplified in 2015. It's been one of the best-selling sales management books ever. It is constantly at the top of the charts. Did you know you were going to hit such a nerve when you wrote the book? This is a really important book.
Well, you're generous, and I loved your take on it and your review of it, so thank you. Mm-hmm. No, I didn't know that because New Sales Simplified is so popular, and new sales is what everybody wants. So I get why that book has the legs it's had.
Right.
I took a risk with Sales Manager Simplified because really I was holding up a giant mirror to the people that hire me. Mm-hmm. And this happens where I get, come in and fix our sales problem, or, hey, teach us how to get more new sales. But the truth is, training salespeople only goes so far. And if you don't deal with the leadership and the culture and the talent management and accountability and role definition and compensation and all that stuff, the training doesn't last. Mm-hmm. So I wrote that book because I was pissed. I felt like someone with a platform needed to say to executives, before you're so quick to point your finger at the salespeople for your sales shortfall, why don't you just spend a few minutes looking in the mirror? Because your culture and how you create this thing and how you pay your people and the roles you created and your view of the sales manager and your view of the sales role is impacting the sales results that you're getting. So I'm thrilled that no one has sent me death threats from this book. And I am happy that executives are reading it and still calling and saying, this didn't feel good, but I needed to hear it. And thank you for the practical framework. So let's talk. Because my conscience I felt like, yes, I could keep taking people's money to do sales training, and I love to teach salespeople to be more effective. But somebody had to say this because leadership matters, and you don't change culture from the middle or from the bottom. It comes from the top. And in sales, your heart matters, and a good culture is critical. And sales managers may be the most important people in the whole organization when it comes to culture and performance. So that's why I wrote it. And I'm super thankful for the response to it.
We could spend a lot of time talking about the book. I'm going to get into just one aspect because we just don't have the time to chop it all up. But let's talk about coaching and the lack of coaching attention that so many salespeople are missing out on. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on why that is and why sales managers have such a hard time coaching. And from the book, you talk about, just chapter 4, playing CRM desk jockey. One of the great lines in any book ever. Salesforce.com will fix a broken sales organization, just like having kids will fix a bad marriage. And obviously not a swipe at Salesforce.com. It's just how do you think that if all you're going to do is sit around and play desk jockey, that you're ever going to be able to effectively coach? And from that same chapter, you use a great example. Could you imagine a Major League Baseball team manager not sitting in the dugout during a game, not watching players perform with his own eyes, not being around to offer a word of encouragement or correction on the spot, not caring whether his players' hearts were engaged? And this is one of the huge things that I see over and over again when I'm out working with clients, is that the extent of the interaction is problem solving by way of a phone call or a text message, or the almighty sales meeting. Wherein lies the coaching? Why is this so hard for so many sales managers to get right?
I don't even want to answer. I just want you to keep talking. I mean, you said it. I mean, it's all in there. I love your take on this. Jeff, I don't know what happened. I don't know how coaching and observing salespeople became optional. Mm-hmm. And you or I will look at a sales leader and ask, I mean, how are you spending your time? And tell me about the time you spend one-on-one with your people. And one-on-one is where you should do real accountability and also where you do real coaching. And I get sales managers with a straight face. They look at me and they say, I don't have time for that. And I look back at them and I go, you've lost your mind. Mm-hmm. That's your job. Mm-hmm. That's not like the air-cooled seats in your car. Mm-hmm. This isn't an option. This is the transmission. Mm-hmm. This is the job. You can't manage people with your head buried in a screen, and sending emails in the middle of the night doesn't count for accountability or coaching. And the consequences, it's there's no coaching. There's also no mentoring. So today we have amateur salespeople running around who no one is helping. And we want to know why we get commoditized and why we don't fill the funnel and why we're getting outsold, because we have sales managers living with their head in a CRM screen or analyzing some report and thinking they can lead by email. And coaching is not hard. I tell this regularly when I'm leading sales management workshops, because inevitably there are sales managers who are not sales experts. Mm-hmm. And they fear getting exposed because they're not trainers and they're not sales technicians, or they're not a sales nerd like I am. But you don't have to be a sales technician to coach. There are three critical things if you're going to go out in the field and watch your salespeople work, and that's for an outside seller. Inside, it would be the same thing. There are three things. You would prep with them, you would observe them, and then you would give them feedback. And you don't need to be a professional level, elite performer in whatever sport to be a coach. You can ask good questions and get them ready for a meeting. You can say, hey, who are we seeing? What are their personalities? What's the history here? What's your plan for the call? What role am I playing? How are we going to introduce this product? What else is going on? Let's plan this out. That's the prep. The observing is you go in the meeting and you watch and you take notes, and you don't have to be the hero. In fact, you're supposed to make heroes, not be the hero when you're the sales manager. So you go and you play a role, but you observe. And then after the meeting, you say, hey, how do you think? What is a good coach? You look at him and go, hey, how did that go? Tell me what you thought. What'd you do well? Where'd you get stuck? What did we learn about the customer? And then after, you can share your thoughts. Hey, this is what I observed. This is the percent of time you were talking versus the percent of time the customer was talking. I liked how you did that. I liked how you did this, but oh my gosh, there was that time where the prospect asked you a question and it begged for you to ask a follow-up or a clarifying question, but you just launched down this one path. Why'd you do that? Mm-hmm. What would happen if you would have asked him why he asked you that, or dug a little deeper? And all that's coaching. And you do not need to be a guy that can write a sales training manual to do that. Right. And if you do it, everything changes, because now you have firsthand observations of your people, you have observations of the marketplace, and you're blending accountability and coaching and the other parts of the job, and everything is better. And I meant that analogy in the book on the baseball. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine? I mean, a baseball manager just looking at stats and getting reports and making lineup decisions? No. Crazy.
Yeah. And I think that if you look at it from that perspective of, if they're not doing that, if they are not there, then what are they left to do? If I had the great pleasure of following the San Francisco 49ers dynasty back when they had a professional organization in Northern California. Anyway, I watched Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, and I watched the magic that happened in that relationship. And I can't imagine that Bill Walsh ever tried to coach Joe Montana and had Joe Montana, do you know who I am? Do you know how many? That's not the way that it worked. There was such a tremendous amount of value that was brought there. But the idea of Bill Walsh not attending the game and just reading the box score the next day in the paper and saying to Joe Montana, hey, you were 11 for 25. And what's the matter with you? What do you think Joe Montana's going to say? Well, if you could get a receiver who could catch the ball, or if you could get those linemen that to block for me, I'd have better stats. They're going to have that story. And unless you were there to be able to see it firsthand, there is no way. And I'm convinced that too many sales managers just have their own comfort addiction. They don't want to be uncomfortable in that environment of trying to coach, and so that they don't. And look, I don't want to belittle sales leaders. I know that there is so much time and pressure for for what it is that you do. But man, your thought there that this is not air-conditioned seats, this is the transmission. There is nothing optional about coaching, and the idea that I don't have time just rings back into the concept that we always have time for that, which is truly important.
So Jeff, let me ask you this back, because I here's one of my takes. Part of this is not the sales manager's fault. Mm-hmm. Part of it is the company that has lost sight. This is my opinion.
Totally.
They've lost sight of the sales manager's job. So they get buried in so much crap. They really don't have the time to do it, but it's because their boss or the senior executives don't understand what the sales manager's job is. And I'm curious from your angle, especially in the world where you play, do you see something similar where it's not just the discipline of the manager, but we're asking these people to do so much they can't do the high value activity?
I think that's absolutely true. However, I do place the onus back on the sales leader here. So if the owner of the company or the president of that division, whoever it is, comes and says, here's this report, I need it by the end of the day, or I need you to sit in this meeting for the next 3 hours, that sales leader has to be able to look at it and say, look, you're the boss. I'll do what you tell me to do. But I want to tell you something. My plan had been to go one-on-one and spend several hours with Jack, because Jack hasn't had a sale in 3 weeks. He's really struggling, and we need that guy who's in a horrible slump right now. We need his production, or we are not going to make our numbers. So if you want me to be in the meeting for 3 hours, that's your call, but it's going to cost you sales that we otherwise need from Jack. You let me know what you want me to do. And I don't think most sales leaders are willing to put up that kind of fight and to really stake their claim on lead conversion, that's what we do, and that everything else has to be measured by our efforts towards lead conversion, and that comes through coaching. So I do think that you're absolutely right. The organization is making it very hard on sales managers, but I think sales managers have a responsibility here as well.
That's brilliant. Love the great pushback and great response. I love it.
We're just about out of time. Give us. We could go all day, Mike. This is just such a wonderful conversation. I'm all geeked up. What advice do you have for the sales professional or the sales manager that's just hit a plateau, that just seems to be stuck right now?
Yeah, it would be the same answer for both, but with different frameworks. Mm-hmm. If it's the seller, back up, call timeout, and just check the basics. Are you targeting the right accounts? Are you really being strategic about whose business you're pursuing? Take a look at your messaging, your story. Is it strong? Are you addressing customer issues? Are you blah, blah, blahing all about what you do? Mm-hmm. And then you've got to look at your calendar. The biggest issue in sales today is not that we don't know how to sell. It's that salespeople don't spend enough time selling. Mm-hmm. And I promise you, as a seller, if you step back and evaluate who you're pursuing and evaluate your messaging and your sales approach and look at your calendar and your real effort, you'll find your sales issue. And the similar answer to sales managers, are you doing the high value activities? Are you meeting one-on-one for accountability and for coaching? Do you work in the field? Are you running good sales team meetings? We get so caught up doing all these other things, we forget the few precious things that actually move the needle. I always take people back to the basics because that's what works.
If you wanted to look at it now, Mike, at this point in your career and your body of work and all that you have accomplished, if you look at it and you say, here's what I'm hoping one day they will say about Mike Weinberg. What's the? I know we're not supposed to think very much about our legacy and all that, but what's the one thing that you hope that you would be known for?
Well, that's really good. I haven't given that any thought at all. I would love for them to say he was blunt and bold, and he told us the truth and gave us simple things that helped us. No one thought he was brilliant, but they thought he got to the root of the issue and gave us things we could implement easily to fix them. Because that's really what motivates me. And I am, I, like you, we're in this battle trying to tell the truth to people who need it. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, morons and weirdos in our industry sending people down wrong paths. So part of the place I'm sitting is trying to call out the truth and go, no, it's not that crazy and that complicated. And just because someone got 300 likes on a LinkedIn post doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Here's the truth. Here's what works and here's what doesn't. Let's go implement it.
Yep. Absolutely love it. It's such great stuff. Mike Weinberg is his name. NewSalesCoach.com is his website. We'll put that in the show notes here as well. New Sales Simplified and Sales Management Simplified are the books. Make sure you follow him. He writes great stuff, very, very inspirational. And as you've just heard, very approachable, very down to earth. And I think it's Mike brings to us the type of sales that we can all get behind. This is the way that we want to think about sales. Mike, I can't thank you enough. That was just such a phenomenal conversation. We're going to have to do it again sometime.
Oh my gosh, you've got me totally energized, and I love this show. And thank you so much, Jeff. Great being with you, and all the best. And here's to many new sales for your listeners.
Amen. Well, Murph, do you get the sense that we've taken this conversation over 2 different episodes of The Buyer's Mind? You get the sense that we could have kept him on the line and had 4 or 6 or 8 or 12?
There was so much material there that, I think we could have taken this a lot further.
Yeah. You can just tell that Mike is the kind of guy who is going to just ponder things. He's going to look at a concept and turn it on its side and get it from all different angles. But I just love the ideas that he brought forth as it relates to sales leaders, and especially this very simple framework for coaching: prep, observe, feedback. Are you getting ready for the encounter with that salesperson, that coaching session? Are you observing firsthand versus just looking at it on a CRM? And are you providing feedback? Murph, you're not called to do a lot of coaching in your job, but I assume that made perfect sense to you.
It does. And as a matter of fact, now having been with Shore Consulting almost a year, I've had some great coaching by my good friend Wade Mayhew, who preps, observes, and gives me feedback about what it is I need to do better and how I can improve my processes, which makes us a better overall organization.
Yeah, I look at it from the perspective that great coaches are going to look at their salesperson. There's 2 ways to be able to look at your role as a sales manager, as a sales leader. You can look and say, I am Luke, or I can say, I am Yoda. And I would look at it and say that the concept here is that Yoda is the instructor, but it's Luke who saves the world. And that's the role that we want to be able to take. We want to prepare people to do great things. But in order to do that, we have to be present. We have to be there. And I just want to address this concept here that I talked about with Mike here just a moment ago. If you're a sales leader listening to this episode right now, boy, I just got to challenge you. Do you have a comfort addiction? Are you so uncomfortable at the thought of coaching that you're simply not spending enough time with your salespeople? Because I want to tell you right now, we talk to salespeople about this over and over again, and we're constantly asking the question, how much do you want to see your sales manager? And how much do you see your sales manager? And the fact of the matter is that they see their sales manager rarely, but they want to be coached by someone who is capable and who cares. So if you're a sales leader, do what your salespeople want you to do anyway. Be present, be available, be honest, be helpful. Own your career. But I can tell you that the most successful sales coaches ever were the ones who made coaching a priority. They did what they needed to do. And I'm just so grateful for Mike Weinberg speaking just the truth on this, stepping forward and saying, you gotta do this. And I don't care if I'm making you uncomfortable. You have to do this. This is not optional. This is not air-conditioned seats. This is the transmission. Wise words.
Well, and I think it was important what you brought up too, and that is sales leaders need to be brave enough in their organization to push back against the organization, because otherwise nothing will ever change, and we end up hurting ourselves even worse because we didn't speak up.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Murph. And I'm going to throw that out as a challenge to sales leaders who are listening right now. Who dictates your priorities? And if your priorities are out of whack, if you're working on the wrong things, who's making that call? Because either you're making that call and you need to change it, or somebody else is making that call and you need to manage them. But ultimately, what really matters? What really matters? You need to ask yourself that question, what really matters? And I'm here to tell you right now, coaching matters. Own it. Run with it. Do it. Well, listen, if you like the podcast, we'd really appreciate a subscription. If you love it, a review would mean even more. And then consider posting a link to the podcast on your social media page. But that's a wrap on this episode of The Buyer's Mind. Hope you enjoyed it. You can find everything you need at jeffshore.com. But until next time, go out there and change someone's world.